All right, everyone, welcome to our monthly One Thing webinar series. Every single month, we have one conversation live. We find a best-selling author whose book is aligned with the one thing, somebody that we respect what they have to say, and we bring them to you live and later on demand on the podcast because ultimately, we want to help you better invest your time. That's what we're here to talk about. It's our most valuable resource, yet the challenge is most people go through their days spending it. And it's because, I don't know, David, were you ever taught in school how to invest it?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So we are here today to take an angle on the one thing, and we're having a leadership conversation. For those of you that listened to episode 283 of the One Thing podcast with the man that you see in front of your face today about the trust edge, we talked about how you as an individual can develop trust with other people and how that is the one thing that makes everything else easier or unnecessary. Today, we are having a conversation about what it means to become a trusted leader. So the person that you're going to get to meet today is a best-selling author of The Trust Edge, and his brand new book, The Trusted Leader, will be coming out later this month on the 30th, which you can pre-order at trustedleaderbook.com/one thing. With that, let's get into this conversation with David Horsager. Did I get the name right this time?
You got it. It's great. Thanks, Jeff. I mean,
it was on my 411 to figure out how to say your name.
We got it. Thank you.
Well, good to have you back, man.
Hey, appreciate it. Love what you guys are doing.
So take us back in time. Where did this idea of trust come from for you?
Well, you know, a lot of people think, oh, you had to have this terrible upbringing. You had to have this thing happen, that thing happen. Now, I'll give you the middle first, and that is I did have an epiphany after teaching on leadership and these kind of things, 1999 or somewhere around there, where I was working with organizations. They kept saying, we got a leadership issue. I'm like, it looks like a trust issue. We got a sales issue. It looks like a trust issue. And that led to the research and books and more research. Now we put out one of the biggest studies of its kind and working companies. And all that process has fueled the passion. But if I go way back, where did it really come from? Some people think they only find truths in tragedies. You can actually learn a lot from good, from the greatness too. And so I was 10 or 11 years old. It was growing up under great leadership on a farm in central Minnesota. So I always wondered, why was my dad so loved? Why did people want to work for my dad on this 1,500-acre bean farm in north central Minnesota? And our farm was 8 miles from the nearest town of 500 people. And what I remember about this day would be a great example of what I'm talking about. 10 or 11 years old, all my older siblings were off the farm by then. 5 in the morning, we had breakfast. 5:30 in the morning, we jumped out in the blue Chevy pickup truck to check the crops. Mom was in the house, just stayed in the house after breakfast, and we drove down the quarter-mile driveway, field to field, irrigator to irrigator, checking the crops. When the far reaches of the farm, it's a public dirt road. I don't know what farmer or neighbor left it there. You can't see another farm from ours, but there are other farmers driving around. And there was some trash in the middle of the dirt road. And I know one thing, my daddy does not like litter. I knew exactly what I was supposed to do when he swerved my pickup truck over in such a way that my door was immediately above the litter. I opened the door, I reached down, and I'm 10 or 11 years old, nobody around. I reach down, I pick up the Playboy magazine. Now, I am not here to tell you what to. I used to be an ethics professor, not here to tell you what you should believe, shouldn't believe, what's right or wrong. I am here to tell you, if you act on what you say you don't believe, you lose trust in less than a second. And I
say that again real quick.
If you act on what you say you don't believe, you will lose trust in less than a second. And I knew what my daddy said he believed about this kind of thing. I'd seen him mentor our tough hired guys on the farm. I'd seen him mentor my older siblings. I'd seen him, and I heard what he said, but this day I would see it. We kept going from field to field and irrigator to irrigator, and pretty soon it's about mid-morning on the farm, and some of you might know what that is, probably about 7:30 in the morning. But we came into the home front, up the quarter-mile driveway. I jumped out of the pickup truck at the house to help mom or play, or I don't know what I did. My dad then drove another 100 yards out to the shop where he started to work on some tractors, combine, that kind of thing. From the house, you can't see the backside of the house. You can't see the tractors. You can't see the shop. It's 100 yards away. The phone rang. Some of you might remember when there was one phone on a farm with a cord attached. And, mom took a message. It was for dad. But then nothing used to be so urgent. She would just put the message on dad's lunch spot. But for some reason on this day, she took the message and she said, David, go give this to your dad. I took the message. I ran out in the attached garage. No way he would know I was coming, hear me, see me. He lost most of his hearing in the Korean War, but I was coming. But I paused inside where he couldn't see or hear me. And on that one entry door was the only little window that would see at the whole backside of the farm. And I still don't know why today, but what I saw through that window would change my life forever. Because I watched my daddy from 100 yards away, knowing what he said he believed. Today, seeing it, I've watched him pull himself out from under a tractor. I stayed inside still as could be. I don't know why I stayed in there instead of running through the door, but I paused. And I watched him pull himself out from under the tractor he was working on. I watched him walk around the other side of the combine. I watched him walk up to the other side of that blue Chevy pickup truck 100 yards away. I watched him reach under the seat, pick up that Playboy magazine, and then I watched him keep his arm outstretched and walk 30 paces to the shop furnace where I watched him immediately throw it into the fire. Now, I'm not here to tell anybody what to believe, but I will tell you, as I watched him do those kinds of things when no one, or he thought no one was looking, I learned a little bit about trust and why people trusted him. We talk about in our work being the same on stage and off stage. And he was the same on stage and off stage. And when I think of their 50th anniversary, hundreds of people came to see mom and dad, in the and celebrate them. They all love from Alaska and the UK, and people came back. And now it's 60 something anniversary. But we often learn from, I remember in our grad work, toxic leadership and that kind of thing. But you know what? My message in this moment is we can be great leaders. And through that example, we can actually change the world too. And that's what we hope for. In fact, one more thing here is people think, David, you do a lot to try to create trusted leaders, trusted organizations, even trusted global governments. We work on corruption issues in East Africa and around the world. And the problem with just being trusted, which is the name of the book, Trusted Leader, the problem is people can manipulate ways of trust to look like it without actually being worthy of it. What we're really talking about is being trustworthy, and that's when we gain the greatest authentic advantage. And that's maybe the one thing.
Yeah, I love that. With everything that's going on in the world right now, why does trust matter more than ever?
Well, it matters more than ever. And people say often, this stuff, David, it's so timely, but it's also timeless. It always was the most important. When we look at the research and we do, like I said, the Trust Outlook every year, one of the biggest studies of its kind, and we kept finding, number one, 92% of people would love their organization more if they could trust their leadership. Number one, ahead of being paid more autonomy, they want to trust their leadership. So people either want to be leaders that they can trust, trusted leaders, or they want to follow leaders they can trust. Why it matters more than ever, also is the research keeps showing trust is the leading indicator. Everything else lags. So people are solving the wrong issue. In fact, that's why I wrote the second book or third book, I guess, but the Trust Leader is the reason people are solving the wrong root issue, and trust is always the root issue. So we think it's a leadership issue. It never is. The reason I follow a leader or not is trust. It's not. I think it's a sales issue. The reason I buy from someone or not is trusted. We think it's a marketing issue. The only way to amplify a marketing message is increase trust in the messenger. Maybe today, as you and I know, with the challenges of our world, what about diversity, inclusion, equity? The biggest Harvard study shows diversity on its own pits people against each other unless we increase trust. Trust is the only way to get the great research-based benefits of a diverse team. So trust, I want to bring to light that trust is the core issue. When they deal with that, they actually deal with the real issue that drives retention, attrition, sales, and a host of other things.
Mm-hmm. In episode 283, when we talked about the trust edge, we went pretty deep on the 8 pillars of trust. I want to review them from a high level here because I think they matter before we dive into things people can do as leaders to better build trust.
Absolutely. So just to note, they were even this year, again, from an outside university, these 8 pillars were through triangulated revalidation, validated as the way trust is built globally. This is research-based content. Each of the 8 pillars is for clarity. Each research funnel starts with a C word. That doesn't mean it's some motivational book. It's a research funnel, of how we can define this. So I'll whip through them fast if that's all right.
Go for it.
8 pillars of trust, relatively co-equal from the research. You need all 8 to gain this great advantage of being trusted. Number 1, clarity. We trust the clear and we mistrust or distrust the ambiguous. Number 2, compassion. We trust those that, what we learned in the research, we trust those that care beyond themselves. We don't want to be accountable to someone that doesn't care at all beyond themselves. Number 3, character. Some people think this is everything, and it's important. We trust those that do what's right or what's easy, and we have a 7-step process for driving high character into organizations. Many people are incentivized against the character they want to build through the wrong kind of sales incentives or other things, but bribery issues in certain parts of the world are incenting the wrong character. We have to look at that in organizations. Number 4 is competency. This pillar, I might trust Jeff here, of course, to take my kids to the ball game because of character, compassion. That doesn't mean I'll trust Jeff to give me a root canal, right? Because of competence. You've got to be competent. If you're leading the way you were 20 years ago, I don't trust you. Selling the way you were 10 years ago, I don't trust you. You got to stay fresh and relevant and capable. And one thing listeners absolutely care about, staying fresh and relevant and capable. So we'll move on to the next pillar, which is commitment. We trust those that stay committed in the face of adversity. If you think of people that left a legacy in the world, Mandela, Martin Luther King, Gandhi, Jesus, or Joan of Arc, they were people that were committed to a cause beyond themselves, often to death, and they were trusted because of the commitment. And under this one, you just got to understand that you don't get commitment without giving it. The only way to rebuild trust is keep a commitment. Commitment matters. The next pillar is connection. People trust those that are willing to connect and collaborate. Each of these pillars has counter forces in an organization. So when we're looking at an organization, if we see siloing or something like that, we know we have a counter force to this connection pillar. The 7th pillar is contribution. The number 1 word that came out of this research funnel was results. We trust results. You can't just have compassion without getting results. You can't just get results without compassion. You have to have all 8, but you got to, I go in for surgery, surgeon cuts off the wrong leg. We got a problem because I might be a compassionate surgeon, but I didn't get results, right? So final pillar is consistency. This is it's king and queen of the pillars because sameness is trusted. If you're, for whatever you do, good or bad, if you're late all the time, I will in fact trust you to be late. The only way to build a reputation, consistency. The only way to build a brand, consistency. So that's the 8. And just to say it, I believe you can solve without ego, I hope, you can solve every organizational leadership issue against these 8. So I'm not saying it's easy. I know how to do it all, but we've contextualized this for global work across, organizations, the world, pro sports teams. I'm just saying that if you can actually define it by these, you solve the real issue. So just a quick example, we might think we have an engagement issue. We don't. The only way to get engagement is trust. We might think we have a referral issue or net promoter score issue. The only way to drive that is trust. Or the one good example is we got a communication issue. Jeff, we got a communication issue. Actually, at the core, you never have a communication issue. Communication is happening all the time. When we define it this way, we solve the real problem. Clear communication is trusted, unclear isn't. Compassion is, hateful isn't, and so forth.
Yeah, that makes sense. I, over the last 5.5 years, have recognized the power of questions. Realizing that the moment you ask a great question, the future can actually change because you shift what they focus on. And I know in your experience, you have had 3 questions that have helped you take really big ideas into really simple actions. And for you personally, it helped you lose 52 pounds in 5 months. And that same process helped a company triple their sales in 90 days. Talk to us about those questions.
So I will argue, this is great. Thank you, by the way. I'm passionate about this process, and it comes under the clarity pillar, but it can lead to consistency and commitment and other things. But, many questions actually don't take an idea to an action. And many people think a lot of the questions of the consultants of our day, and they're good ones. Simon Sinek, the why. That's a good question to have purpose, right? No doubt about it. I agree. Jim Collins, the who, get the right who's on the bus. That's also important, and it's very good. We want the right who's on the bus. What I've seen often, though, more often than I'd like to admit, is I see buses full of great who's singing about their why, kumbaya, right off the cliff. So the three questions, the three most overlooked questions that actually drive strategic clarity, that take an idea to an action, that actually give hope. Try to listen as if for the first time, and we'll get through this process in a way that you can use it. The number one question is, how? How are we going to get there? Okay. The second question, way more important. It is, but how? And the most important question of all, of course, is how? You have to get used to asking how at least 3 times to get to the clarity I'm talking about, and most people don't. How? It might take 7. So this, by the way, is a great process to get to the one thing. How are you gonna do that? How are you gonna, not more hows, I'm talking how down. So let's take one of the biggest healthcare organizations in North America, just to make this stick a little bit. We're at a private location. They're losing HCAP funding. They're losing patients. We went through the 8-pillar framework and process, and we've done all this work. Got 100 people. I said to the CEO, what do you want to see? What do you need to change here? He said, we are losing in our culture. We have to get a better culture here. I said, great. How do you want to start to do that? You know all this stuff. How do you want to start? He said, I think we should start with clarity. You start with clarity. I think that would help. Okay, great. How are you going to be more clear? His answer, a CEO. We're going to communicate more. Do I trust him yet?
No.
Not for a second. Okay, great. How are you going to communicate more? He talks to his team a little bit. We got it. We're going to hold each other accountable. Now, you and I both know people have accountability as a value, and I'll ask them, how do you hold people accountable here? And they're like, accountability stuff, they don't know. I said, how? Asked how 7 more times. And then I went through this process with the senior leaders. Every leader came up with something they could do today or tomorrow. And that organization 7 years later said that process was the tipping point of change for their organization. The key is how you can do that, how, until you can act on it today or tomorrow. And by the way, global governments, 2 of the biggest 5 companies, 3 of them in the world we've been through this process on, and they've been able to get to clarity, even though they started saying we got 22 rocks and 45 goals. Nope. How you can act on today or tomorrow. The healthcare thing. The weight thing. I started saying to people that live, that have to, fly to 100 events a year and eat at banquets like you and me and get invited to these things. How do you stay fit on the road? They said the same thing around the world. 4 words: eat less, exercise
More.
That was not clear enough for me. So I had to get to a one. I had to get to a one thing, and I had to have a few, but I had to get to a one thing I could use today or tomorrow. So I said, but how do you do it? How do you do it? I can still remember. I'll give one idea here, because not that I'm not a healthcare expert. This is not healthcare advice, but this helps us understand the how. Okay. So I said, one doctor came up to me, I still remember, left side of the stage, 80 years old, fit as could be. I thought, I can learn something from this guy. He said, David, I don't know if you want to use this, but here's an idea. Most men in America, if they just wouldn't drink their calories, they could eat exactly the same and they'd lose 30 to 50 pounds in 1 year. Well, I started thinking, okay, is that a final how? I can look at it. If there's calories in it, I can't drink it. That's a final how. I can apply that right now. For me, I knew I wasn't going to lose that much. I'm not I actually just don't like alcohol. I'm not a legalist about this, though. I just don't like alcohol that much. But when I'd get on the plane, I would order a Coke. 2 Cokes was a meal of bad calories. You sit next to me on the plane tomorrow, you'll notice whatever I order does not have calories in it. So the point is, it's a final how. I can look at it, I can apply that. And by the way, if you use this how method on teams, your final how always has a who, when, and where. So even if I'm going to work, this stuff, but I'm telling you, it's harder than you think. I'm going to work out tomorrow morning. If I don't know it's 5:30, I won't do it. I'm going to work out tomorrow morning. If I don't know where, I'm either going to go to the gym or I'm going to run. If I have a choice at 5:30, I'll do neither. When you do it on teams, and we do how plans all the time, we stop wasting so much time on SWOT analysis and everything else. We do how plans. The final how has to have a final person. Co-leadership is terrible. We've been lied to. Collaborative leadership is excellent, right? So if you have more than one, data shows you, our research even shows, if you have more than one person on a final project task, you have 50% less chance of it ever getting done. So how until you can apply it today or tomorrow, and you always can. So we'll do an example, but first, response.
Yeah, I want to jump in here because for people, I mean, this is on the one thing. I want to tie it to the principles of the book, and so you can see exactly how tightly aligned this really is. So you should see, I'm sharing a screen right now if my internet wants to work. All right, so everybody's familiar with this image of the dominoes, the idea that a domino doesn't just knock down one of equal size. It's 50% larger. So a 2-inch domino knocks over 3, knocks over 4.5. By the 18th domino, you're knocking down the Leaning Tower, or the Leaning Tower of Pisa. 23rd domino, the Eiffel Tower. 31st, you're 3,000 feet above Everest. And by the 57th domino, you can reach from the Earth to the moon. It's that hockey stick growth, right? David, what you're talking about is what we call identifying the lead domino. People are really good at thinking big. I want to lose 52 pounds.
Right.
I want to make more money. I want to pay off my debt. I want to improve my marriage. I want to have a better relationship with my children. I want to get that promotion. We're good at understanding that result that we want. But when they ask, what do I need to do or how will I do it?
Yep.
They don't go small enough. And what we often see is they arrive at what we call an 18th domino, which is the Leaning Tower of Pisa. Even though it's actually leaning, you and I both know if we went and tried to knock it over, it would not fall. It's still too big. And what you're talking about is continuing to ask how until you arrive at a lead domino.
Exactly.
An action that is so small that effortlessly it will fall.
And you almost have to go backwards further than you think. So someone will say, I'm going to read more, right? Well, yeah, I'm just going to start reading more. No chance. I got to get a book. If I don't have the book, okay, I can do that by tomorrow morning. But even then, I need to get up early. I'm going to get up earlier. When their lead actually has to be, I'm going to go to bed earlier, so I get up earlier. You have to back up how I get up earlier. Okay, I got to go to bed earlier. How am I going to go to bed earlier? I'm going to set a timer to do this. I'm going to stop watching TV. I'm going to, whatever it is, I have to go backwards to that key how that will affect the other things, and that's critical.
And the challenge that people have, we say think big, go small, trust the dominoes will fall. They don't trust it. Like if you had just said isolated, my one thing every time I go to take a drink is to check the can first before I put it in my mouth. And if you just go ahead and read the label before you drink anything, you'll lose 52 pounds in 5 months. People wouldn't believe you. But when you start with the end of like, I'm going to do 52 pounds and here's what I realize, and you reverse engineer it, all of a sudden they can see the progression of those dominoes and go, okay, I get it. If I just check the label before I put it in my mouth.
Perfect. And by the way, that gives hope. So a lot of people are stuck without hope because they're like, I can't do that, right? I can't do the Leaning Tower of Pisa. But and you always, your final how has to be something you will do. So if someone says, I can never have ice cream again, that is just not going to happen for me. I love ice cream, but I can stop for 90 days, which I did. I had to do a few more things to lose, but now I can handle it, right? Because I don't also do bread, noodles, and 50 other things. So I'm going to keep the ice cream, but not the other things. But the final how has to be something you will do. So for some of you, you're not going to not drink a calorie. Fine. You got to find hows that you will do, whether, and this is with sales or with a better relationship with your spouse, partner, or friend. Final how. So I said we'd try this. We didn't set this up at all, but I just said, we're going to try something, okay? We're going to try this out loud.
We're turning the tables, and I've done this a few times in the past. It always ends up well. It's always massively uncomfortable for me, and I'm good with it. So let's rock and roll.
So here's the deal. We didn't walk through this, so who knows what'll happen. But I just said, Jeff, what's something you want to change? So I think let's just, for the fun of it, we'll just see what happens. So Jeff, what is something you'd like to see happen? Something you would like to change?
Yeah. So business is 5.5 years old, and it's been very successful so far. And when I look at our vision, when I did our goal setting retreat last year and asked, where do we want to be someday from now? I got clarity on that. And then said, great, based on that, where do we need to be in 5 years to be on track for that? That made me massively uncomfortable because what I realized was in order to be on track for our someday vision, we would literally almost have to 20x the business in the next 5 years. And I can't tell you exactly how we're going to do that, or can I? We're about to find out.
So I want to I'm gonna force you. I'm gonna play the host here. So I'm gonna cut you off and pry a little bit, and we're gonna have fun. But you want to 20x the business, okay? And I would think about this a little bit. Is this realistic or possible, or all these kind of things? You're like, yep, all that's done. So I said, okay, so how would you start to 20x the business? What do you think?
The one thing that I came up with was that I actually needed to fire myself from running the business.
Perfect. So the next is how I'm going to fire myself. So remember, we're drilling down, team. He's not done yet.
And let me clarify. I still have a job. My job is growth, but I now have somebody who runs the business.
Okay. So I'm going to fire myself as this, and that's all specific and clear. Great. Okay. So how am I going to do that?
Hire a VP of operations.
Perfect. How am I going to do that?
I'm going to have a 15-minute time block where I will identify the 2 to 3 things that person has to do exceptionally well. Otherwise, they're fired.
Okay. How am I going to do that?
I'm going to open up my calendar right now and block the 15 minutes.
Now we have a final how. So we just were overwhelmed. Now, this doesn't mean this is going to be easy, or there aren't other things that have to be considered, or we don't have to train the VP or the COO. We don't have to do this, but we just finally came to something that gave us hope. Okay, I'm going to just mark that, because we can always do something by today or tomorrow. And what he can do is, he may not even have the 15 minutes yet, but he can set the 15 minutes. Jeff can set the 15 minutes in his calendar. And he came with the final how. Now he has hope. Okay, we have a process. We're going to move on this. And we start moving the right direction. And before you know it, we've howed several other times. And we have a VP that's actually working us toward that goal. And I know Jeff's 3 things that I do. I don't do this, but I do. I'm in the organization. I'm still CEO. Now CEO looks like this. This is kind of fun because I've been through this process. Recently, I hired a chief of staff this year. I have an executive assistant. We know there are 5 things that David does. They're the most important things to Trust Edge Leadership Institute. If he does any more or anything different than those, it's not best for everybody involved. He does these 5. Everybody else does everything else.
I've got 4.
Oh, perfect. You're even better than me. Even clearer.
And folks, this is actually what happened. Realizing, okay, we are missing somebody who has actually been the number 2 to a number 1, taking a company from startup to high growth, and a bunch of other qualifications, and figuring out I was hyper clear. They had to be able to turn a vision into plan or results. They had to be able to build and lead a high performance team. And without slowing the business down, they had to be able to protect culture and build systems for scale. Like, I was that clear. And then when I started by knocking that domino down, when people started coming in, the filter was just so clear.
Love it.
Have they done these 3 things? Can they do these 3 things exceptionally well? And if the answer, it just narrowed the funnel massively quick.
Well, I love this. And I think, we have tips and takeaways under each of the 8 pillars, but this how idea, it aligns so well with one thing. It is one of many tips and takeaways under clarity. But it is a way, maybe if people, sometimes you're bought in like we are on one thing and the great work we're doing, but maybe hearing a different way to get there just can jar someone out there to say, oh, that's a way to get to the lead domino. I can do how.
And that's what I like about this is you and I are saying the same things. We might be using different words. It validates the fact that look at anything that you want. It starts by getting it one thing at a time.
Truth is truth. We're saying the same things because we're twins today too, by the way.
That and by the way, the one thing that made that happen is I showed up and I didn't look as good as him for sound check, and so I went and I changed.
There we go.
Truth. David, we were talking a little bit offline, but what are the things that you see that leaders unconsciously do that undermine their trust as a leader?
There are so many. And, let me jump into one. I might have touched on this last time, but it's worth repeating. The research keeps showing it. Over 90% of people would trust their leader more if they were more transparent about their mistakes. And we see this all the time. People are unwilling. They're undermining they're big on being transparent in certain ways. And remember, first of all, trust is bigger. We believe trust is always the root issue. Trust is a little bigger and more complex than people at first think. There are many people talking about trust that maybe don't have the full picture. As an example, people will say transparency is trusted. It was like the business word of the decade, right? Transparency. But some of your kids are so transparent on social media, I don't trust you for a second, because confidentiality is also trusted. So we have to balance out some of these things. It can take a long time to build trust, but actually most of your trust is built in a moment, especially in crisis. And you can extend trust to your team and get more out of them, but if you extend too much, you might have a problem. So first of all, just remember, trust can be more complex than we think. But I think the interesting piece of research here that speaks to that, to a way that leaders are kind of shooting themselves in the foot, if that's the question, is they're being transparent, but not necessarily about the right things. So as an example, over 90% of people last year surveyed in the Trust Outlook global study, they would be more trusted if they were more transparent about their mistakes. And so many people talk about I'm so great, I'm opening myself up. See, I won this award and I'm this. We don't win. We don't connect on that, right?
You want to see my trophy? You want to see my trophy case?
Remember,
Cool.
I graduated from Harvard, whatever. So we trust each other when we're transparent about our mistakes. And I sit next to, these days, sometimes next to leaders of countries and leaders of companies. And I see this imposter syndrome, and they're scared to death to share who they are. And in fact, if they would be a little bit willing to be transparent about their mistakes, people would have their back. And one more quick story here. I remember when this became true for me. The stuff works at home too, by the way. And my oldest daughter, she's in college now, but she was like 13 or something like that. And we're on a walk, and she didn't see how I lost our whole family's money when I bought a business and lost everything in 2 weeks before she was born, and all these different things. And frankly, she just was a little insulated seeing me fly off to events and whatever. And my wife knows there's challenge. My friends know, my team knows, oh, he's got stuff to work on. But she, at this time, we're on a walk, 13 years old or so. And she said, I don't know if it was about academics or boys or what. She said, Dad, you wouldn't understand, because you're perfect. And that might sound sweet, and that's great at 3 years old when you're their hero completely. But at 13, you and I both know we got a problem if that's what she's seeing. And so because she's not going to share truth with me when she has struggles, right? So I made an intention right then, because I knew the research. I started sharing on our walks places I blew it. I made this mistake today with my staff. I made this mistake on the road. I've done, you might not know this, but when you were growing up, I did, whatever. What happened to our relationship? It just changed forever. That's all, for the good. And so it's one way leaders are self-sabotaging, is by actually doing the opposite of what they think. They're not sharing humanity of themselves.
I love that. I love that. I'm curious, because oftentimes a leader doesn't get to pick their team. Sometimes they get promoted or they get brought in from the outside, and there can be a lack of trust among the existing team. I want to dive into this one, but first and foremost, what can they do to quickly build trust?
Well, there's a statistic in the research of how one-on-ones build trust the fastest, and what nowadays that might be virtual or not. But I'll just tell you, the first time I had a leadership role, a significant leadership role, I was in my 20s. I was in a whole different part of the country. I was, in essence, to them, I was a foreigner. Everybody else was from that part of the country. And, and almost all of my team was older than me. And I was put as the senior leader. So I told my wife when we moved there, one thing I have to do is I have to be the first one and the last one to leave every day for the first year. We don't have kids yet. I've got to show my commitment in a foreign land. So one idea is just showing commitment. I'm not saying you can always do that, but how can you show commitment? Another way, something that I instituted there was, I got to have one-on-ones with everybody. If it's too big of an organization, weekly one-on-ones with everybody that is in leadership, at least, like, and listen. A friend of mine, he's I think the greatest airport director that ever was. His name's Steve Wareham. He became the director of Minneapolis-St. Paul International Airports. Now, I think our airport in Minneapolis-St. Paul International is the top of the top biggest 10 in the country, has been the top airport 3 years in a row. Now he's retired, and he's asked to consult on airports in Copenhagen and all over the world. But he was a leader at Pig's Eye sewage plant. I mean, he came from this sewage operations. He said the first 6 months when I came in, and he is now an incredibly respected leader there. But he said the first 6 months, I'm not going to change anything. I'm just going to listen. Now, we don't always have that opportunity, but somehow you're going in as a leader. There's going to be skepticism. They don't know you yet. So if you can share yourself, if you can share your heart, if you can share your hope, here's my hope. My hope is that I know you don't know me, and you can honestly share, I know you don't know me yet. I know I don't have a track record here. I know you're wondering some things, maybe even why I'm here. I get it, like being out loud about that. And then one-on-one listening to challenges, and you can build buy-in the fastest one-on-one. Those are a couple ideas that I would jump to, and there are more.
Yeah, and I think one of the things I've been thinking about in preparation for this conversation is, as a leader, well, I'll back it up. I've heard Gary say, when you look at an organization, you really have two things. You have your goals and you have your people. He said the mistake that a lot of leaders make is they make their goals a movable object. I set the goal here, but I'm going to allow it to move. And when you do that, your people become immovable objects. And I just knew that Gary a long time ago made a commitment that his goals were always going to be immovable objects, which means it's about the people becoming the people they need to be to honor the goals. And if they can't become those people, then we have different conversations with empathy. How do you build trust while holding a higher standard, which can make people uncomfortable?
Yeah. Well, we would call it healthy accountability. So many places accountability is terribly unhealthy, but I'll tell you this. I'm going to give you an example of one company I went in. The VP is here. There are 9 directors. Of those 9 directors, 8 of them are fantastic. One of them is a sloth. Terrible, horrible, lazy. Who does everybody hate of these 8? The sloth or the vice president? The vice president, because he's not doing his job of dealing with that. We want this team, right? We want this kind of team. This guy's look at that. I mean, all good to him. He can get by with this. Now, this is the deal. If we're going to have high trust, we have to create a way to have healthy accountability. So we teach a 6-step process, but I'll just touch on a few thoughts here. Number 1, it is hard to be accountable to someone if we don't feel like they care at all about us. You have to care about me as a human. I have to show care about you, and care enough to say, in some cases, by the way, I've had people I hate. It's tough to let people go, but sometimes you're saying the best for them is about fit, and they aren't the best fit here. So showing care. Another way of dealing with accountability is we walk through this process, but we ask, are we really clear? You said they're immovable. That's great, but are we clear about the target or the goal? Are we clear, number 2, about your ability? Are you able to do this in 2 ways? 1, have we resourced you to do it? There's very few people get frustrated if they're held accountable to something they aren't resourced to do. And second part of that ability one is, are you capable? Are you able to do this? And then we move to, are there clear metrics on this? So you have this goal for the year, or you have this goal for 5 years to, you got a 20x every year. But are we having metrics along the way so we know we're hitting them, so that I can pivot if needed? And a lot of people have this goal way out here, but they don't do the next thing, which is clear check-ins. A clear check-in always has a person, place, and time. So have I checked in and said, and by the way, check-ins need to be at a rhythm in our real world calendar. every day, every week, every month. Don't give me well, we check in every other week, every 6th week, that's not natural, not going to happen. So have your check-ins. And then we have clear results. This is the place where, if I've said before, we're clear on results, then I have the right as a leader to do the 4 R's of giving someone a redo, or a ramification, you didn't get that result, or a reward, you did get that result, or releasing. But a lot of leaders don't do this process ahead of it, and they just go, well, I'm going to release you, you're fired. But they didn't say ahead of time, here's where, now, if you do this, you get this. If you don't do this, this is what happens. Or I might give you a redo because of things we didn't know about or whatever. And then finally, I ask for clear commitment. How could I need this? I'm a 10 on it, but how committed are you? You know, I mean, 1 out of 10. How committed are you on this part? I know but I want to know from your heart. And if they're below a 9, I want to say, why is it? Well, did you know you gave me 5 other things that I have to give? I don't think I can do it. I can't be committed to all of them. Okay, we can have a conversation. But if they're saying a 9 and 10, and you've given a trusted space for them to be authentic, then you have a chance that you can go back to. That the other problem, bigger problem, by the way, and I allude to it in the book, it comes out of this boardroom discussion that actually was real, is when people actually lie. Where are you at 1 out of 10? I'm a 10. I'm a 10 too. I'm a 9. I'm a 10. When they have no intention. And that's a whole nother trust problem.
Yeah, I get it. Well, folks, for those of you who are here live, I would love to open it up. What questions do you have for David? Go ahead and put them in the question box. And Andrea just worked to flag those for me. You can right click them and make it as a flag. David, why don't you tell them where they can get a copy of the book while those questions come in?
Well, we have something special for you, for all the One Thing listeners. It is Trusted Leader, not the, kind of like Facebook, threw the out the window. So just trustedleaderbook.com/one-thing, ONETHING. And then you can also, if you'd like a free chapter, just to jump right in, you can text trust to 55444. And kind of fun, because this book is set up, it's really cool design and beauty and just the feel of it and everything. But first half of the book is a business parable to just shift thinking about trust, this old word we thought we knew everything about, and see how it matters more than ever, and how it changed the life of a leader in business. Really fun story. That's just quick. And then the second half is application. How tomorrow morning you can put these pillars to work. The ODC method, the SPA method of creating an environment of appreciation, the how method is in there, and the whole 6-question 90-day quick plan is in there. The trust shield, this way of, one of the most powerful exercises we talk about, it's right there for you to apply, create a trust shield, share it with your team. So those application pieces are right there. And if you go to the One Thing, trustedleaderbook.com/one-thing, you get a host of other resources and videos and masterclass just if you grab the book.
Yeah, and people were asking for the link. I put it in the chat box, and you also should see it because I just put up a slide. So can you guys see that on the screen right now? Does it show it? If so, put yes in the.
I don't see it. Trustedleaderbook.com/one-thing.
Ready? Oh, there we go.
Ooh, nice.
Boom shakalaka. I know how to press the play button.
I love it. If you support this work, our book, it goes to work we're doing around the world, and trying to just increase trust in leaders and organizations, global governments, even our government here in the US, policing work and trust. We have a certified coach, as an example, just in Indonesia, that uses this trust work with executives, oil and executives, but she also uses it for girls coming out of trafficking to rebuild trust. And so we're passionate about this work, and we thank you for supporting it and really, being a part of this through the book or any of the other assets we'd love to give you generously.
Yeah. And again, folks, if you have questions for David, please go ahead and put those in the questions box. Emily said we'll have to check that link. You said that this goes beyond business.
Well, absolutely. I mean,
Talk a little bit more about, I mean, whether it's with a spouse,
yeah.
whether it's with your kids. How do you be purposeful there?
So I often get intimate about this and talk about it. It changed me. It changed my leadership. It changed my parenting. I've had people come to me, by the way. I have a sales guy. I still remember it. Burly, tough sales guy spoke at the annual meeting one year. He came back the next year and he said, I knew this would help me with sales. In fact, it helped me triple my sales. But I want to tell you something else. And he got teary eyed. I mean, it's a few 100-pound guy. This last year, it saved my marriage. And so I'm passionate about that. There are several takeaways in the book that you can use at work, like appreciating people and being present. Same at home, right? So a couple ideas. One of those I just kind of shared, be transparent, even as parents. Hey, we're not perfect, right? All that kind of stuff. One of the ideas under the character pillar we talk about is having kind of guiding principles for your family. And in fact, we had these guiding principles. We call them the Horsager tenets. We had them on the table, and basically kitchen table where we eat breakfast and everything. I remember every kid, by the time they're 5 years old, by the time they're 2 years old, they knew them all. They could list them. Oh yeah, this one. Oh yeah, that one. Oh yeah, that one. But they also, kids will help keep you accountable to what you say. One of ours, as an example, was be generous. Be generous. Now, whenever this was 15 years ago, my oldest daughter, we were just talking. I'd started flying more, and my wife is home. You got these 4 kids, 5 and under. It's crazy town, and I just thought, we need to get her a newer vehicle, maybe. And we had a Suburban, decent vehicle from Minnesota, certainly, but just thought we'd need to upgrade. And so started talking about it at the dining room table, and it just so you all know, when I started back in I have to tell my kids, back in the 1900s, Lisa and I started our first business with $1.40 to our name, black mold in the basement of 86-year-old Clara Miller's with no bathroom, kitchen, or windows. So we'd go upstairs and share hers. We had nothing. And so, I kind of still would go to that kind of like, not that abundance mentality, like, oh, we should trade this in and get as much as we can, whatever. But she saw us grow. And I still remember this. I said, my daughter said, we started talking about trading in the vehicle. And she said, well, isn't one of our values be generous? Doesn't that person from church need a vehicle? Shouldn't we give it away? We ended up giving away that vehicle. They held us to those guiding principles and values. So one way is having values and a mission as a family. There are many others, but there's an idea.
I will. So we just came out with these the core values deck. So we curated 140 different core values, and you can figure out what your top 3 are. And I got clear on mine. It brought me immense clarity on what I needed to be saying yes to in my role with the company. But my wife last year, when she finally got clarity on hers, order, safety, experience, it was like a light bulb went on in our marriage, because all of a sudden we were able to understand, oh, this is why cleaning the house being in a certain order is so. I used to be like, gosh, why does this have to be put away? Like, why? Let's not make a mountain out of a molehill, but understand, like, oh, that's order. Safety. She's not a backseat driver. She just likes safety.
Yeah.
Oh, going to a nice restaurant for a date isn't actually a date. She wants an experience. Like, the moment when you understand your values, it becomes a compass for the decisions you can make. I can't speak highly of it enough. It's a game changer, and especially doing it with your team, like, it's huge. I love that your daughter knew that.
And by the way, that trust shield activity pulls in 9 areas, and one of them is guiding principles. You can do that activity with your family. We've had sports teams that have said their sales went up. I mean, their wins went up because of it. They do it in spring training. You can do it with your team, but it's a way of kind of defining yourself. Socrates said, know yourself. If you're going to be a great leader, you got to know yourself. If you're going to lead yourself. And then the second part of it is when we share that with others, who we really are, our values, our priorities, our weaknesses and strengths, and some of these things, part of the trust shield, we actually start to, that shield does this create the paradox of the shield is it protects, right? It's a weird paradox because the more vulnerable we are with the right people in the right way, the more it actually protects us. So it's one way that trust works.
And I'll just second the accountability from the kids. I'll always remember the first time I was doing dishes and my daughter was like 5 or 6 at the time and said, "Daddy, play with me." And I said, "Honey, I'm doing the dishes. I'll be right there." And she looked at me and said, "Daddy, are the dishes your one thing or am I?"
Oh, mic drop.
Oh man. Yesterday I had a training and my wife wanted to leave our 5-year-old son at home. And I was like, "You got to take Dean. I got this training. It's super important." And he looked at me and said, "Daddy, please, I'll respect your time block." And I was like,
Oh.
"Okay, you can stay, buddy. You can stay."
Yeah. Hey,
Great question.
Training. Bring them right in. Have them sit up front. That's good.
That's right.
If
My Daphne was here, she would totally be photobombing this.
Yeah, my kids have spent more time in the ocean in East Africa, I think, in India with our work there than they have in the Gulf or something in the U.S. So it's so like cool. Bring parent on the fly.
Brian asked a great question, which is, what's the best way to build trust with an audience that you're marketing to?
Well, this is a great question, but the way we would look at this is I would go through the 8 pillars. And I'm not trying to make it complicated, but I would go through and say, am I clear? Am I showing compassion to that audience? Am I having a character that's authentic? Am I showing commitment to them? Are we giving them the result contribution? Are we giving them the result they need? Is this consistent with who we are in every other? And so I mean, because all 8 are important, I don't know one of those is most important to you. I just don't know from this short time together. So you can look through those 8 and say, does this message, is it consistent? Is it clear? I will say a couple things. I mean, clarity. Let's just take how we contextualize this briefly. Take the clarity pillar, because we talked about that quite a bit. Clarity for the leader might be, you've got to be clear about that vision. Now, not just annually. Don't forget the consistency pillar. If you're not sharing the vision every 21 days, nobody knows it. So they aren't clear. You just lost clarity because you lost consistency, right? So they go together. For the salesperson, this would be really important for your audience. That audience question that was just asked, and that is, a lot of salespeople are really clear about how cool they are, how long they've been in business, but they're not clear about the benefits to me, the potential buyer. So even what you're clear on, think about that, because remember, it's what serves the buyer. Clear about, so many people spend so much time on proposals and everything about how cool they are, and that nobody cares. Clear about the benefit. For the teacher, it's still clarity, but that teacher isn't liked because they're not clear about the assignments. And so every kid goes home frustrated because it's a lack of clarity about the assignment. The kids are frustrated. So it could be clarity anywhere, but with that message you're talking about, I would just take a look at this. Am I absolutely clear? Could I cut anything out? Am I showing compassion, and so forth?
Yeah, I love that. Just reviewing the 8 pillars and asking, how are we doing on these? Got a question from Daryl. One of the things that we always talk about in our community around the one thing called living your one thing is that the purpose of a goal is to be appropriate in the moment. It seems very similar to purpose and they're synergistic with your idea of how at least 3 times to get really specific. Okay, we're just drawing the connection. So I appreciate that.
And by the way, just so it hits the clarity pillar.
Leader?
What's that?
There was a question, are the 8 pillars discussed in the Trusted Leader?
They are. And so I want to say something to your gentleman. Yeah. We talk about the MVP. There's a lot of clarity is a massive pillar. They all are. Yeah. But I just touched on how. That gets to what I can do tomorrow. That doesn't mean there isn't a whole nother part we call the MVP, mission, vision, values, and priorities. We talk about a whole lot of things there. You talk about alignment. We have a whole alignment process. We have a whole clear communication process, which is clear, like the ODC, have I shared the outcome, the deadline, and asked for clarifying questions. So we looked at this glimpse. Once you have that mission, how are you living that out every day? You can ask the how.
I love that.
So are the 8 pillars discussed? So yes, they came out of the original research, that landed, a lot of that landed in the Trust Edge. The problem is, of course, since it's research-based, the 8 pillars are still true. We've learned a lot in the last 12 years since Trust Edge was written. So in the back half of the book, the 8 pillars are there, and it's all new actionable ideas a leader or parent or salesperson can use tomorrow morning that aren't in the Trust Edge. Same 8 pillar framework, but I would say this about Trusted Leader, that they're just actionable and quick tips and takeaways. And Trust Edge has some of that too, and a lot of great stuff for deeper and organizational trust. But I mean, we just picked a few usable tomorrow morning ideas under the 8 pillars for Trusted
Here's
Leader.
the thing I'll say, folks. If you feel like you can improve your leadership by focusing on your trust, then please do us a favor and support David, because not only do we believe it'll serve you, but also when the book launches, like the way the algorithms work, it helps him reach more people. So if you go to trustedleaderbook.com/one-thing, and that's ONETHING, you can pre-order the book right now. It goes live on the 30th. That would just mean the world to us that you would be supporting him.
That would, thank you. And
Yeah,
I am
and for the free chapter of the book,
grateful.
there are some people who are international that the text didn't work. Is there a way that they can get it as well?
They can. You know what I would do, and I'm just going to give it to you. Just if texting trust to 55444 doesn't work, Gabe, GABE, at trustedge.com will take immensely beautiful care of you, and he'll throw in some extra videos and everything else just because you had a problem today. So you just want a bunch of extra stuff, just Gabe, GABE, at trustedge.com. You have issues, you want the book, he'll probably give you something else free, just because he's that kind of guy. Just do that, and I'm very sorry if the text didn't work.
Is he in the room giving you a look right now?
No, but I'm sure he is from outside the studio, because I think he can hear through the walls.
So good. Well, folks, we're in the business of time, specifically becoming the type of people who invest it instead of spending it. I want you to put your answer in the questions box. What's the one thing you can do to guarantee that this is an investment of your time? What's one thing you can do to guarantee that this is an investment of your time? Yeah, put it into action. So here's the question. Based on everything you heard today over the last hour, what's the one thing you can do such that by doing it would make building trust as a leader easier or unnecessary? Put the answer in the questions box. Rodrigo says, buy the book. Put the book into action. I got the book, and I just got it on Audible too. Buy the book. Okay, a lot of people, dude, you're going to get some books.
Oh, you're very kind.
Ask how until I get to the first domino. I love that, Donna. Maureen, drill my house to do it today and tomorrow. I love it. Well, folks, thanks so much for investing your time with us. It means the world. We genuinely do this to serve you and to help expand your mind when it comes to living the one thing. So, David, thank you for your contributions.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, One Thing. Thanks to the whole team that I know supports you well, and that's been a treat.
Appreciate it. All right, everybody. See ya.